After they made a run in the 2017 NBA playoffs, most believe the backcourt of John Wall and Bradley Beal was one of the best backcourts in the league. With those two guys, the thought was that almost every team in the league will be looking up to the backcourt that they had for years to come. It was always reported that those two guys had beef with one another and they wouldn't coexist together long term. And it was more those guys' desire to be the best and win games. In 2016-17, the Wizards won 49 games in the regular season and was the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference and played in a Game 7 in the second round against Isaiah Thomas and the Boston Celtics, but they would fall short. It could have been the franchise's first appearance in the conference finals since 1979. Beal and Wall had proclaimed themselves as the best in the East going into the next season, and it seemed like the Wizards were on the rise. But front office decisions and injuries kept this team from reaching its full potential. Ernie Grunfeld's time as the president was bad to say the least. It's hard to give him too much credit for drafting Beal and Wall because they were supposed to draft them with their draft position. It's not that hard to draft John Wall with the number 1 pick. Grunfeld has made a lot of boneheaded decisions, like trading out of the 5th pick in 2009 for Mike Miller and Randy Foye, who only played 1 season with the Wizards. It was a certain player still available at the 5th spot in 2009 by the name of Steph Curry, and you also had DeMar DeRozan available. In 2011, the Wizards had 2 first-round picks, and instead of drafting Klay Thompson or Kawhi Leonard with the 6th pick, they went with the so-called European Blake Griffin and Jan Vesely. He was more than a bust than Derek Williams, who was drafted 2nd that year. And instead of drafting Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, or Nikola Vucevic, they drafted Chris Singleton with the 18th pick. How about signing Gilbert Arenas to a $100 million contract after a bad knee injury he had suffered? Otto Porter had turned himself into a solid role player during his time with the Wizards, but by no means was he worth the max contract, not even a little bit. When Porter was a restricted free agent, the Brooklyn Nets signed him to a max offer sheet, and that could have let Grunfeld off the hook because a lot of people would have understood not matching that offer. But leave it to him to act out of desperation and match that offer. Signing John Wall to a supermax extension during the summer after leading the team to the 2nd round wasn't the craziest thing. It's just unfortunate that he hasn't stayed healthy to be able to maximize his full potential. His contract also has a 15% trade kicker, which makes it near impossible to trade him at this point. The Wizards finally let their longtime president Ernie Grunfeld go in April of last year, and they named Tommy Shepard the new general manager of the Wizards. This was a long time coming for Wizards fans. It was past time for Grunfeld to be out the door. The owner wanted Tommy Shepard to reshape the roster and get them headed into the right direction before the draft and free agency. In 2019, the Wizards selected the first Japanese-born NBA prospect in Rui Hachimura with the 9th overall pick. And they also made deals for sharpshooter Davis Bertans and Mo Wagner. All great moves, and it's even more impressive given the time that Shepard had before the draft. But before we get to the young players on the Wizards, let's talk about the rise of Bradley Beal, the Wizards' best player, the perennial all-star. I don't believe anybody expected Bradley Beal to become a legit scoring machine in this league. He has exceeded most draft experts' expectations. Beal has become a more well-rounded player, and many will argue that he's a top 10 player right now. He was the first player since Kobe Bryant to score at least 50 points on consecutive nights. Against the team with the best record in the Milwaukee Bucks, Beal scored a career-high 55 points on 19 for 33 shooting in a thrilling overtime loss. Going toe-to-toe with one of the league's best teams who had one of the best defenses should give you confidence about the team. But after scoring 53 the next night and losing to the lowly Chicago Bulls has to be really depressing for Bradley Beal. How much losing can he endure before he's fed up? There was a lot of speculation about the possibility of the Wizards trading Beal before the season. But in a surprising move, Beal and the Wizards agreed to a 2-year, $72 million contract extension on October 17th. Beal has said all the right things and looks committed to turning the organization in the right direction. But things can change very quickly in the NBA. There's a nice collection of young players the Wizards have brought in over the last couple of years. The Wizards had a couple of players participate in All-Star Weekend in Chicago this season. Davis Bertans gave a great performance in the three-point contest, while Mo Wagner and Hachimura suited up for the Rising Stars game. Their former first-round pick Troy Brown Jr. has slowly become a solid all-around player for the Wizards. and he's still only 20 years old. In his second season before he got suspended, he was averaging around 10 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 steal per game. You could say he's one of the Wizards' best defensive players. He became the 4th youngest player this season to record a game with 5 or more steals. Troy Brown is one of 10 players this season with 4 or more double-doubles coming off the bench. He also scored a career-high 26 points along with 7 assists against the New York Knicks earlier this season. But he has been up and down in his first 2 years. He still needs to prove he can be consistent. Trading for Davis Bertans was an amazing move, something you normally don't see from the Wizards. Bertans is an unselfish, hard-working player who can gel with any team in the league. The Latvian Laser. One of the best marksmen in the NBA. Among the 11 players who knocked down at least 150 three-pointers this season, Bertans ranks 4th in shooting percentages. If the Wizards could have won more games at this point, he would definitely be in the discussion for 6th Man of the Year. This guy just helps you win games. He'll be a free agent at the end of the season, and the Wizards need to do everything they can to re-sign him. The projected cap is around $115 million. It might be different because of the possible cancellation of the NBA season. The Wizards might have around $15 million in cap space. Hopefully that's enough to keep Bertans in Washington. It's safe to say that Rui Hachimura is a keeper. He showed off his mid-range jump shot right off the gate. He seemed to be getting more comfortable on defense, but he still has times where he looks lost on that end. He is the starting power forward that the team needs. I don't think his ceiling is Giannis or Kawhi, but he still could be a damn good player in the near future. He was averaging around 13 points and 6 rebounds while shooting 48% from the field. The Wizards also traded for former first-round pick Jerome Robinson, who has yet to make his mark in the league. He has only played a handful of games this season, but he has made a couple of big-time shots. But like most young players, he needs more playing time, and next season will be very important for him. It might be a make-or-break season for Jerome Robinson. Defenses struggled to defend the Wizards because they had a lot of shooting options off the high screen pick and roll. It's always difficult to help off a player who can knock down an open three-pointer, and Ish Smith is an above-average pick and roll player. Only if the Wizards had a competent defense, they might be in a better position to be in the playoffs. That's why I just did not understand why they signed Isaiah Thomas before the season. It's almost like they were waving a white flag before the season even started. Everybody knows that Isaiah has been a bad defensive player, one of the worst, and it's only gotten worse because of injuries and getting older. His offense doesn't make up for his bad defense anymore, not even close. They got rid of Isaiah before the trade deadline, but the damage had already been done. The Wizards were projected to be a mediocre defensive team before the season started, and the addition of Isaiah Thomas made it impossible to stay in games. But they could get a good pick in the 2020 NBA draft. With so many question marks at the top of the draft, a lot of teams are going to be unsure about prospects this season. There are 2 prospects that would be perfect fits for the Wizards. One is USC big man Onyeka Okongwu. He's a defensive powerhouse. The Wizards need defense, and this guy can deliver. He's an improving offensive player, but he'll make his money on the defensive end. He's a much more safer pick than James Wiseman in my opinion. You don't have to run plays for Okongwu for him to be effective. The other prospect is Isaac Okoro, but it's unlikely that the Wizards get a chance to draft him unless they get lucky and move up in the draft lottery. The question is, do the Wizards try to keep Beal and Wall or try to trade one of them? Do they reset or do they reload? Obviously, Bradley Beal will be highly coveted by almost every team in the league. John Wall's contract is too bad to move at this point, especially before anybody gets to see him play after a full year off. Beal might ask for a trade at some point, but he might not. He looks committed to see this all the way through. The suspension of the season might be the best thing for Beal. Instead of going through more losses, he can take a mental break. It gives him more time to think about the potential of the Wizards. They might be stuck with John Wall for at least 2 more years. For the Wizards' sake, hopefully John Wall is fully recovered and can recapture the magic of the 2016-17 season, where he looked like the best point guard in the league. It's not out of the question that he can be an all-star again. Getting a full year to recover is the best thing for a player like John Wall, who has always been slowed down by multiple injuries. He's recently said he's going to be better than he was before. Maybe after letting his body rest and recover, he's feeling the best he has in a long time, maybe in his NBA career. That confidence is what you want to hear if you're a Wizards fan. Reloading is the best option for the Wizards. They will be hoping that Bradley Beal stays patient while they try to rise back to the top of the Eastern Conference.